there's not a good example of somebody that just saves money in a savings vehicle that gets wealthy. At best, they're going to keep up with inflation. At worst, like a checking account or even a savings account, they're losing ground as it relates to inflation. So it's like termites in your money. It's not actually going to help you get to wealth. True wealth is through cash flow. And so I always have to take whatever the savings dollars I have and put it to work.
What would your life look like if you stopped trusting Wall Street and started building wealth on your own terms? On today's episode of Seek, Go, Create, The Leadership Journey, we're joined by Joey Muré, founder and partner at Wealth Without Wall Street. Joey is a faith-driven entrepreneur with a mission to help people gain financial freedom while living with purpose. With a background in mortgages and a passion for relational leadership, Joey brings a powerful blend of impact, integrity, and generosity to everything he does. Get ready for a conversation that challenges the status quo and offers a fresh perspective on leading, giving, and building lasting legacy. Joey, welcome to Seek, Go, Create.
Oh, Tim, so glad to be here with you. This is going to be an awesome time.
That you're here too. I'm always excited to talk to people that are from the South because we shouldn't need a translator, but you don't have an accent. You're not from there, are you?
I am from the South originally. I was actually born in the South, but my parents were both from Buffalo, New York. So I think there's just this kind of tension always in my accent. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, you need a nickname like Bubba or something, don't you?
Well, it's Italian, so I'm the Italian Stallion is my nickname on the podcast. There you go. No Bubba here.
Oh, very good. So first big question, then we're going to dive in. I like to go to the deep end pretty quick, but any time I'm interacting with people from Alabama, I've got to ask the question, Alabama or Auburn, do you have a flag for one of those? Or
when I moved here in high school, I had so many people put me on the spot with this, you for Alabama or Auburn, boy? And I'm the kind, like, if you push me too hard, I'm just going to say neither one. I'm not going to go for either one of them because that's crazy. But this place is the college football hub of the world. I remember years ago, I was in a client's office and he was showing me, he worked for one of the big cable companies, and they were just getting like the college football channel or whatever it was. It was some big deal around college football. And he said, man, I'm just really stressed out right now. I mean, we just got the word that we're getting rights to this channel. And I was like, okay, well, why is that such a big deal? He showed me a heat map of the nation. And Birmingham, Alabama was this just hot red center compared to all the other places in the country. And I thought, oh, okay, I get it. That's why people are so crazy here. So anyway.
It is pretty amazing. That's not the purpose of our talk here, though. That's just other stuff. So, Joey, I'm curious if I were to ask you which question would you prefer? This is kind of like my get started question. Would you prefer to answer the question, what do you do? Or who are you? Which would you prefer? And go ahead and start answering.
You know what? I would say what do I do is easier because it's simpler to, just in general conversation. What we do, what I do is, and I'm driven to impact the world. And I guess this is kind of both, right? It's who am I and what we do. I'm driven to impact the world so much that when I was in the mortgage business for 11 years, I got compelled by this concept that we now teach at Wealth Without Wall Street, so much so that I was at a conference and I was just like, wow, why do more people not understand this idea of taking and stewarding wealth as an owner, not as somebody who abdicates that to somebody else? And it was one of these rare occasions, I'll go ahead and say, that I felt like God put his thumb in my back and said, why don't you do it? And I thought, oh, well, because my wife is pregnant with our fourth daughter. We have five, but at the time was our fourth daughter. She doesn't have a job. I'm the sole provider. I'm making over $300,000 a year. I'm comfortable in the mortgage business. Those are the reasons why I wouldn't risk it all and go, try to teach people this. But man, it was so compelling that I said, people need to know this system. They need to know what the importance is of not abdicating the responsibility for your finances that God's entrusted you, and then how to then turn that into financial freedom. So that's what we do. We're about freedom, and it starts with spiritual freedom, but then it leads to financial freedom and all that comes along with that.
That's good. I mean, anytime people make statements like, I want to impact the world, I have these two things that go through my head, Joey. So I'm going to share them and I'm going to let you respond. First thing is usually wow, that's pretty awesome. I want to know more, which is part of my question. And then the second thing that goes through my head is impact the world. Yeah, right. Come on. Kind of this, really? That's what it is? Because I think I've had similar things in my head. Has that kind of always been on your mind? I mean, like going back to, kid on the playground, or when did that crystallize for you?
I would say in college, I was very much impacted by a ministry called Campus Outreach. And I'm not certain if everybody's familiar with them. They're mostly in the Southeast on college campuses and mostly smaller campuses, although they're definitely growing into bigger schools now. But there was the concept of discipleship that was taught to me that, man, Jesus impacted the world by literally spending time with 12 people. And those 12 people, he didn't even spend all of his time with. He really focused on three. But just from those relationships in 3 years of ministry, there's a reason that you and I are talking about him today, and we're not in Jerusalem. Like, you're in Arizona and you're all over the country, but I'm in Alabama, and I am impacted by what happened over 2,000 years ago with Jesus affecting 3 people or 12 people. How can I impact the world? Well, I can do that here wherever I'm at. I can spend time with people and pour into their lives that then they can continue to do that. I now get the opportunity through this media, right? Through a podcast. There are thousands of people that listen to our show all over the world. And so for me, I didn't necessarily know how, but I knew that was always a drive since I got really impacted with that idea of discipleship.
There's some words. I'm going to bring 3 concepts together and then ask you some questions. I believe that people of faith have, at times, different thoughts about money or wealth. And sometimes they're not good and correct and biblical and the right thoughts. So we'll kind of have that as a foundation. But then I love that you brought up the word discipleship, because I think that that's what we're really lacking a great deal of in the kingdom of God. I think it's really something that we have a lot of people maybe saying things, but not people spending time and discipling and walking people through things. So 3 things: people of faith, the challenges or issues that they have with money, and then kind of holding someone's hand and discipling and working with them. I believe that you guys are working on all 3 of those. And I think you've got a community, you've got podcasts. I think podcast is a good portion of it, but to me, community coaching and different things like that is like one next level thing. So I guess I'm just kind of throwing 3 words at you: faith, money or wealth, and discipleship. And I'm just going to let you respond.
Sure. Well, I'll just tell you, I'll kind of sum it up into those 3. So 1, faith. We don't have any sort of a statement on our website that says you have to be a Christian to engage with us, or that we're going to share our faith with you when you engage with us. But I can tell you there's been numerous opportunities for people to engage with us that maybe would have never stepped foot in a church, that now they're thinking differently and asking questions And we've even seen some people come to faith. One of the guys that works for me right now became a Christian because he brought up a very simple question one time. He was sharing his story and telling us about what happened. He said, "Well, I know you and Russ are religious." And I was like, "No, we're not. We're not religious at all." And he said, "What? What are you talking about?" I said, "We have a relationship with Christ, but if you think religion is going to save anybody, you're sadly mistaken. In fact, I learned these things. I'd love to share them with you at some point, and if you want to do that." So we just engaged in a Bible study. He became a Christian through that process. And so, yes, faith is super important. It's not something that we require of anybody to engage with us, but it's super important, and it's the foundation for how we think. And I would say that that leads into stewardship, which is how the church, how the world thinks about money. What drives everything in our mind is stewardship, that you are not the owner of anything, but that God is the owner, and he entrusts to you all of life's resources that you've been given, including your time, including your body, including your money, including your relationships, your experiences. All these things are things God's entrusted to you. And we have not only a requirement, but a privilege to be able to steward those things in a way that reflects God's glory. And the biggest challenge we hear from people of faith, people in the church, outside of the church, is that they have a really bad idea that money is the root of all evil. Money has all these negative connotations, like, oh, well, even the rich are, it's impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven like a camel going through the eye of a needle. There's so much context missing from those conversations, but it has embedded in their minds a scarcity and almost like a fear for money. And so I find that the church is one of the most atrophied or really struggling to become abundant. And it's not just about having more money that is abundant. It's about seeing money as a tool to be abundant with others, within your family, within your community, within your church. And I can dive into more concepts around that if you want, but that to me is like a foundation. And then the last thing on the discipleship aspect, I would say what drives me in what we do is to say, man, there are things that we've learned about money and passive income and financial freedom that I want to model. So there's a reason why Russ and I share our personal passive income report every month. It's not because we're bragging, it's because we want to model what's possible. We show people our actual system that we use to perpetuate passive income because it's a model. It's just like Jesus modeled to the disciples how to interact with people, how to share about the kingdom of God, how to engage with the lost. All those things are models. Well, we do that within our business. We help people. We come alongside in a discipleship type process where we coach people. They set the system up and then they graduate into, how do I get my first $500 of passive income? Well, there's a 12-week process that they are engaged with. They have to apply and qualify and all that, but they get in and they then have a group that also has an individual coach that's helping them to get there. So it's not perfect, and I never want to make a claim that it could be similar to Jesus's process, but it's based off of the principles of what we've seen in that example. Does that make sense?
Hello, Seek, Go, Create listeners. This is Tim Winders. Let's take a short break. Have you ever caught yourself dreaming about a future where your leadership not only achieves its goals, but also inspires those around you? As an executive coach, I specialize in transforming those dreams into achievable visions. With my coaching, we don't just chase goals, we create legacies. Drawing from my own experiences and a faith-driven approach, I help you align your professional ambitions with your deepest values, ensuring a journey that is both successful and fulfilling. If you're ready to carve a path that is authentically yours, it's time for us to talk. Visit timwinders.com/coaching to schedule a free discovery coaching call. Yes, you and I will just get on the phone and have a call. Again, that's timwinders.com/coaching, and you could read some more information and then schedule a call right on my calendar. Let's turn your vision into reality. Now back to Seek, Go, Create. Yeah, that's really good. And we may circle back. I do want to look at some practical things in just a few minutes here, but there's something that this is just a question that I always have when I'm speaking to someone that's in these industries. I think, Joey, I'd like to frame it in a couple of ways. Number one, I'm curious about your faith journey growing up. You mentioned in college you were around the organization there, but I also would like to know your relationship with money growing up. I think you mentioned you were in the mortgage industry, and maybe we can chat about that briefly, but talk about your journey. I mean, did you just kind of come out of the womb saying, yeah, I've got a healthy relationship with money. I don't think about it too much, but also don't ignore it. Or was there a journey involved with that? What can you share?
I'll say the reason why I'm so kind of acutely aware of how the church has just brutalized this whole concept is because I don't want to say a victim, but I was a result of that. And it was, I remember conversations with my parents. We grew up going to the Salvation Army Church. My parents actually worked for the Salvation Army for 40 years. They just recently retired. They never had money, and they always spoke of it in a negative connotation. Like those with money were not necessarily serious about their faith. Those with money were almost like sellouts in a sense because, they're the rich people and this and that and the other. And so I kind of adopted those same things. Money wasn't something I sought. It wasn't something that I understood. It wasn't something that I really ultimately wanted. I equated somebody who's sold out for Jesus is going into full-time ministry. Somebody who's not, they're in the business world and whatever, that kind of thing. Had a really, really bad idea of that. And then in college, I was faced with some businessmen that I met that were giving and generous and proactive and very responsible and desiring to impact others at a point that I'd never experienced. And they had the means to do things that were required to send people. I started to see God's economy as not only people who are willing to go, but people who are called to send. And that God's economy doesn't work without the other one. Like both of them are required for the kingdom to go forth. And so I started to pursue going into full-time ministry with that kind of understanding, and God switched paths. I literally was going and starting to raise support to become a college kind of minister, and doors just kept shutting and shutting and shutting. And it was just one of those weird moments where I was like, God, I thought this was what you wanted me to do. And He redirected me to the business world with this new kind of passion to say, I want to try to live so below my means that I can send with a passion. I want people, when they talk to me about raising support, I want to be like, how can I support you? I want to be like, how can I trust the Lord to increase what He's given me so that I can pass it on? Not so that I can just keep increasing the lifestyle. I want to keep increasing the capacity to give. And man, that was a drastic change from how I grew up. And again, I think it was just understanding the Bible, understanding what Jesus said about money and taking it in context versus the Christianese kind of cultural view of these things that were just, quite frankly, just wrong.
Yeah, and I want to say this. This is not throw our parents under the bus talk here, but they had scriptures to back up their thought process about money. And the context is extremely important to bring into when Jesus is saying things about money, and who is he speaking to, and what are they doing at that time? That would be a great conversation. Let's don't go there. And I'm always fascinated by this. I cannot tell you, Joey, how many people that we've had here at Seek Go Create that thought full-time ministry. They were people of faith, and they felt like they were called. That's another Christianese word, if you ask me. They were called to go into the ministry progression, youth pastor, assistant pastor, whatever. And, the ultimate, which is a missionary on foreign soil somewhere. And then when they leave that, they go through this, oh my gosh, they're getting messages from friends. Oh, you're backsliding. Is everything okay? But it sounds like that happened with you early on. Did you go into the mortgage world immediately, or were there some other stops and starts along the way?
Yeah, actually, it was just really the Lord's kindness. I was meeting with some of those businessmen who I'd gotten connected to, and I was just kind of lost. I was like, man, I really thought for sure I was going into ministry. And now I'm trying to pivot and figure out where in the business world I fit. So I met with several of them and just asked them, what do you do? Like, how does it work? I just really haven't had experience. And one of those guys was extremely strong believer who owned his own mortgage company. And he was just sitting with me and just telling me what he did. And I thought, man, that sounds really up my alley, like something I would really enjoy and I'd be gifted at. And he said, you don't have any experience, so no, I don't hire people without experience. I'm like, what? I mean, you just sold me on this whole idea. I'm ready to go. He's like, look, go find anywhere that will hire you, a bank, small bank, and just even if they let you process mortgage loans just to get your head around how does it work and get the experience, that's your first step. Well, at the time, I lived across the street from a bank, little tiny bank. And I said, well, I'm going to take his advice. I walked across the street with my resume and a plate of cookies. And I sat with him and I said, look, I just need to get some experience in the mortgage business. Will you hire me? And the lady was so hungry that day, her stomach was growling in the interview. And I was like, look, I brought some cookies. They're out there in the lobby, like, help yourself. And they thought that was the funnest thing that anybody ever done. So they hired me. And when I say they hired me, they put me on 100% commission and said, go see what you can kill. I made no money for like 3 months, but I got experience and started to get my hands around it. And then I went back to that original guy and said, hey, I did what you said. I got experience. 6 months in, he's like, okay, you can come work for me now.
So you're off to the races now. I think if I did my time frames right when I was looking at your background, you were in the mortgage industry during that incredible, awesome time of 2008. We do not want to spend much time on that, but just give me a little bit of how did Joey do during that? Did the Lord just lift you up and you never had any pain or discomfort? You notice how I was sort of joking about the lift you up. Not total rapture, which I'm not a huge proponent of, but just lifted you up so that you didn't have to go through that tribulation and then set you back down gently in around 2011, 12, or was there another story?
Well, what's super crazy is at the time I was working for Wells Fargo, and they serviced all of their loans. And 2008 hit, and most people see from the real estate person's perspective how bad it was. And if you ask me how many purchase loans I was able to do during that time, it was very few, because people weren't going and buying new houses. But what they were doing is the rates went from the sixes down into the fours. And all of a sudden, I got inundated with refinance loans. People that I had done business with for 5, 6, 7 years at the time, now they needed to refinance at a much lower rate. And there were some government programs even that were allowing them to do it without, having to show as much income and all this kind of stuff. I actually grew my income in my business during that time because we had so many people looking to take advantage of those lower rates. So it was actually a blessing. And most of my real estate friends struggled, but in terms of the mortgage industry, it was a great actually time to be in.
Interesting. Well, I'm one of those that went from whatever the palace to homeless and all during that season. So I actually appreciate stories like that because sometimes we lump everybody says, oh yeah, it was tough, tough, tough. So I think that's awesome. So this is my shift into wealth without Wall Street. I've got one, two, three, four, maybe five browsers pulled up on my computer here. And obviously you and your partner Russ, y'all have really leaned into the wealth without Wall Street message because I see podcasts, I see YouTube, I see books, and I've scanned through, listened to, looked at all of those over the last few days as I've been, researching all things that are Joey. Tell me about, I bet there was a transition as you moved into that. Tell me a little about the transition, and we're going to be moving into the last good bit of time we have talking about what's wrong with Wall Street, what do we need to be looking at, passive income, things like that. So tell me about how it kind of got started, Wealth Without Wall Street.
Well, I'll tell you the baseline of our entire thing, and the thing that compelled me to switch careers from the mortgage industry into what we do now is there was a book that I had read in 2009 that Russ actually shared with me. We were friends from church. That's how we met. And he said, man, I'm going to start sending you referrals as long as you understand the concepts I'm teaching my clients. It's called Become Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. And as I read that book, it's only 88 pages, very small, big print, easy read. I was just shocked that this was the thing I had always was looking for, but didn't know what it was. This was the mindset shift that took me from blindly just keeping my head down, working 50, 60 hours a week, putting money away into my 401k, into IRAs, and just hoping for retirement at some day. And what he shared in that book was that I needed to take control of my finances. And actually, Nelson Nash was a strong believer before he passed. I would say that it was becoming a steward of what God had given me and not abdicating it to somebody else, which is what we've all been duped. I say duped or encouraged or manipulated to think that, man, you know what, Tim, you're just not that smart when it comes to financial matters. And you didn't go to school to become a financial planner or a market analyst or what have you. You just don't have time for that. So you just give me all your money and I'll be the one to manage it for you. Now, a manager in any other situation actually has ownership or requirement or liability to what they're managing. But in the financial world, Wall Street, they have no liability. In fact, your accounts can go up or they can go down, and they will get paid regardless. And they will encourage you that, hey, you know what? We just can't control everything. This is what happened. The market did this, the market did that. And you are literally stuck on a roller coaster at that point. If the market goes up, you don't want to sell because what you're going to miss out. There's this FOMO of it could continue to go. If it goes down, you don't want to lock in your losses and sell because now you're so far behind. What are you going to do? You've just really lost. So you just continue this up and down. And Wall Street profits with today's dollars on your money every single month, where you are putting your money into there with the hope that it's enough when you're 65, 70, whatever the case is. It is the biggest scam that we have been told of all time. And people willingly give that money over to that system every single day. What Wealth Without Wall Street is all about was born out of this concept called the infinite banking concept, which takes all of your cash flow, puts it into your control, into your economy, and then it begs you to become an investor. And that's really where this whole thing came. We didn't know what to invest in, Tim. I'm just being honest with you. If you asked me in 2008, I would have said, go buy like a piece of real estate, a rental property. That's about all I could think of. But we started the podcast in 2017 because we had all these clients doing this infinite banking concept. They had all this cash that they were putting into their system. And it's a high cash value life insurance kind of system of policies. And they're sitting there, hey, Joey, Russ, what do we do with it? And we're like, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, so we started interviewing people that are passive income, real estate, online entrepreneurs, people that could know what to do with capital. And it was all off of Wall Street. So thus the name, Wealth Without Wall Street, controlling your cash, and the end result being when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses, you're now free. I mean, as Tim is nodding his head because he knows what we're talking about. But as you listen to us, I want you to think about your calendar right now. You pull up your phone. I got my phone right here. You pull it up. You look at the calendar. The question is, are the things on your calendar dictated by you or by somebody else? Is it your business that is owned you, that you literally have no time to do anything outside of because it's really dictating to you? Or do you work for somebody else in a W-2 fashion that your majority of your life is being owned and dictated by somebody else? The financial freedom formula, when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses, that means money that is at work on your behalf coming in monthly exceeds what it costs you to live. I then get to dictate what goes on the calendar, and that could be exactly what God has created me to be. I don't know what that is for you, but that is the end result that we're trying to accomplish, and everything we do is centered around that very concept.
I'm sure with a message, Wealth Without Wall Street, since Wall Street is the norm or the standard or the propagandized way, whatever term we want to use. I think I might have shown my hand there. Darn it. I was trying to ask this in a different way. It's what the masses believe. Now, it's interesting. The masses don't necessarily participate in it, but they believe the headlines. I can't pull my phone up. It's my camera. But if I go to any financial headline, they will be reporting on today, recording this sometime in April, something that the current president did that caused the market to go down 500, up 500, whatever. But what's some of the pushback or arguments you get from people when you say that you can create wealth without Wall Street? Because there's probably some that are going through a few people's minds listening in. Let's go ahead and hit a few of those, and then I want to talk about passive income in general before we get to some specifics.
Sure. So number one, I'll just use 401ks as an example. They're like, Joey, you're telling me not to put money in 401k? Like, that's dumb. I get free money from my employer. I get 100% match. That's like it's free money. It's 100% return. I don't have to pay tax on that money, right? It's a tax deferred type of opportunity. Why wouldn't I do that? And here's the thing that it comes down to. If we're keeping score the same way, if you truly do want financial freedom today, okay, and I'm talking to somebody who's 30 to 50 years old. Let's just say that that's the window of time that we're talking about. And you say, I want to be financially free today or as soon as possible. Then by putting money into a 401k, you are actually reducing your ability to become free today. Because you're purposely and voluntarily putting money into something you can't touch until you're 59 and a half. You say, okay, that makes sense, but what about the match? Does the match is your incentive, your enticement to put your money away for the next 20 years, 30 years, however old you are. Is that going to that could be keeping you from what your actual goal is. So if you if you're like, you know what, Joey, I just want to go towards retirement. I don't want to think about it. I just want to be on autopilot. This is not your message, right? Because you just keep doing what you're doing. But for the person that says, you know what, he's right. I want to spend time with my family today. I want to be more active in my church family. I want to be more available because life is owning me. Then the answer is I have to take back control. I have to be in a position to become an investor, to buy back my time by creating passive income. So people push back on the 401k until we have that conversation, because if your goal is different than mine, then we don't have anything to talk about. But if we have the same goal, then you have to objectively agree, no matter what the internal rate of return is, no matter what the tax benefit today is. By the way, there is no tax benefit because 30 years from now, there's no telling what the taxes are going to be when you actually start to pay them. But if we're talking about financial freedom, there is no denying that that is the worst vehicle to get you there. And so that's one thing. And then I'd say the second thing is people just don't want to be different. They want to be just like everybody else. They want to stay safe. They want to stay comfortable in the herd. And for that person, I can't help them either, because you have to be willing to do something that no one else is doing to have the results that no one else is having. And if you're not willing to do that, then you need to just kind of reorient your expectations to not be surprised when you end up exactly in the same place that everybody else is. It's like somebody going to, a really overweight personal trainer. They've already proven that that's the result. Why would I go to them? They don't have the result that I'm looking for. But it's just the same as going and following someone else, your peers, your friends, your family, who's telling you all these things to do with your money, and you look at their life and you say, actually, that doesn't really match up for me. I want to do something different than them, but yet you're doing the same things as them with your money. Those things do not coexist. You cannot do that. You have to have a reality check and say, I need to go find a different personal trainer.
I think what you said earlier is pretty powerful. I want to bring that back up again, that we're not abdicating someone doing something with our money. They just don't want to think about it, don't want to talk about it. They don't have the conversations like we're having here. I love talking about money. I love talking about wealth. I've never had an issue with it. In fact, I might at times should talk about it less, but anyway, so I do think they sort of use the word abdicate it. They shun it. They resist it. And I like the word stewardship. We've used the word stewardship here. We're on 300 plus episodes. That word comes up quite a bit. And it's really an understanding of the gifts, talents, whatever that God has given us, we steward over those. And I believe we have to give it back in a better condition than when we received it, is part of that stewardship. Now, something that comes up, though, that is, I think, a stumbling block for people is this passive income or passive money, because we're programmed to go to work, get paid, go to work, get paid. And I actually at times can be cynical about passive income, because some of the hardest work I've ever done is in the pursuit of passive income. And I'll bring this up from the book. I think y'all have something called the PIOS, Passive Income Operating System, which to me, operating and passive is a little bit of an oxymoron. So I'm going to call you out a little bit and make you really talk about it. But anyway, jumbo shrimp, passive operating. Anyway, but talk about people that need to overcome the hurdle of no, passive income, you can't do that. It's not a real thing. And you're always going to have to do work for some type of financial reward.
Yeah. Well, so I'll just say, spoiler alert, passive income requires active engagement in order for it to ever be passive. Okay, so for instance, and this is where I think most people get the bad idea, I can become a poor investor by passively throwing money at things and not ever spending any time in due diligence or understanding what it means to be an investor. You have to put in the time, you have to put in the energy, the effort to be able to know what good looks like. Okay? Otherwise, the very first thing that you look at is going to look fantastic. And it's a dog. I'm just going to tell you. You haven't looked at 10 deals, you looked at one, and one looks amazing. You look at 10, and that one may be the worst of the 10. But the reason that you don't do it is because you didn't get active as becoming an investor. The second thing is whenever you are even looking, let's say you've become an investor and you are knowledgeable and understanding. When you are looking at deals, you have to actively engage in a due diligence process. This is the stewardship aspect. Hey, this pitch deck came by my office, and I look at it and it looks good on the surface, but there's some due diligence items like who's the operator? What's the asset type? Does it fit my investor? When does the capital actually start to come back to me? Is it quick? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? Is there a stabilization period? Is it geographically located in a place that I want my money to be stored up in? Is it in like looking at the macroeconomics of the world? Does it look like it's in a place where it's going to continue to grow, or is it shrinking back in terms of the market itself? These are all things that as an investor, you actively engage with that opportunity before you passively invest. And so to your point, passive income does not mean uninvolved income. You have to be an investor, and you have to take the time to not just blindly throw money at something. If you do, you will become an investor by learning the lessons the hard way, but it is a necessary step to become that. Now, to answer your passive income operating system, the operating system is the active flow of cash in your economy. And most people never get out of what you just said. Get paid, pay the bills. Get paid, pay the bills. Get paid, pay the bills. That's the rat race. That's the rat race that we get stuck in. The passive income operating system connects a whole different side to that. I get paid, I pay the bills, and there's whatever's left over gets into the right-hand side. We call that the wealth accelerator side. And that's where we tie in the infinite banking concept. That's where we tie in this never-ending compounding machine that is passively growing for you, but it is all a part of the active, controlled environment that you put your cash flow through so that it can create the passive income that will then free you.
Good. And we've already established earlier that this is not necessarily easy. It's not, I think there's some simplification. We're going to talk about that here in our last bit of time together. We're going to simplify what that looks like so someone can understand. There are steps along the way that people have to do a little extra, I think is the way I heard it as we're going through it. I think the first part, you just brought it up. Actually, you said it at the very beginning, is that you chose to live below your means and have extra. I actually think that a large percentage, we could probably find the math pretty easily, of people, we go all over, but let's just talk about the U.S., they are not living below their means. They're not living at their means. They're living above their means, which means this is going to be a tough conversation for them, right? I mean, because this is not some kind of magical get rich quick, you snap your fingers and all of a sudden you're still going to have the same cars and the bills and the credit card debt, and this is going to magically get you out of that. That's not the case. I've actually been around a lot of people of faith that have that philosophy too, by the way, that God's going to somehow wipe everything out and all that. So let's assume that someone's listening in and they've got some extra and they're intrigued by this. They've got extra money. Let's say they're in that age bracket that you talked about earlier. And they go, you know what? I'd like to start creating this. You called it a system. I'll call it a bucket. That they want to start putting something into this bucket. I've heard life insurance. I've heard contracts with life insurance. Then I start investing. Let's take just a few baby steps and walk people through the basics there. So how does it get started?
So the first thing is the passive income operating system is getting your goals aligned with what you do with cash. If my goals are to become financially free, to get my passive income exceeding my monthly expenses, I'm no longer going to put money into 401ks and IRAs. I'm going to stop the flow of money into those vehicles, which means I now have more money in my bank account at the end of the month, assuming I don't allow my lifestyle to creep, right? Number two, I'm going to stop paying cash for everything that I do. Cash is the most expensive way to pay for anything. And most people will challenge me on this and say, well, Joey, I mean, there's no cost to cash. Wrong. There's opportunity costs that you never get a bill for. What do I mean by that? If I go and put $100,000 down on a house that I'm going to then use as a rental property or a second home or whatever you want to call it, that 100,000 came from my bank account, which at that point doesn't have any ability to earn another dollar until I replace it back, right? Nobody's going to send you a bill that says, hey, by the way, Tim, that 100,000 could have earned $36,000 over the last 8 years or whatever the time frame was. But that's the reality of what actually happened. Now, why do we then use infinite banking or these whole life insurance policies designed for cash value? Because they allow you to not only store the capital, put the money into these contracts, but then to borrow against them so that your money always grows, never stops compounding, so you never give up the opportunity cost, and you can repay it over time with there's loan provisions and things we could probably get into if you want to, but the reason we just replace your checking account with a better mousetrap, something that gives you more of what you want it to do and less of what you don't. And then the third thing that people stop doing when they're really actively trying to get to this place of building financial freedom is they stop paying off their debts as the only design for what they do with money. I love Dave Ramsey because he helps people who are living way above their means get below their means. He helps them psychologically to say, stop doing stupid things and trying to keep up with people that don't care about you. I'm glad Dave is. But when it comes to absolutely the simplicity of his deal is just pay off all debt. All debt is bad. Never get debt. It's so bad. Don't ever do it. When you're trying to keep tabs on this financial freedom formula, you have to be objective about when do you pay off debt and when do you not. It's just not this blanket, like if it's debt, you pay it off. You say, man, I've accumulated $50,000 and I have two choices to make. I can either, again, because I'm keeping track of the formula, passive income exceeding monthly expenses. There's two sides to the coin, not just monthly expenses, which would include debts. And so I say, if I have $50,000 that I've accumulated in my system, what do I do with it? I can either go put it into a passive asset. Maybe it's a syndication. Maybe it's into a land flipping business. Maybe it's into a private loan, whatever. And let's just say that would create $500 a month. Or I can take $50,000 and I can pay off a car loan. And let's just say that the car loan was $350 a month. If I'm keeping tabs on this formula, and I could either produce $500 a month passive income or pay off $350 a month for my car loan, which one is actually getting me closer to my goal? To produce the $500 a month, right? So, although I could have paid off the car, it actually would have taken me backwards on my ultimate goal of passive income greater than monthly expenses. Notice that I did not say what the interest rate was because it doesn't matter. It's about the cash flow. Which one is getting me closer to financial freedom? And so if you can be objective about that and keep that as your main focus, now you have a system that you are consistently using those dollars at the highest level to get you to your end result. So that's kind of how the first step that people have to do is stop doing certain things with money, start doing things with money that really uplift and encourage your actual end goal. And we can talk about steps 2 and 3, but that's the number one thing in my mind.
Yeah, and the big thing here is if you're coming against Dave Ramsey, you may have some issues you have to deal with because we won't say he's the 13th disciple, but some people think he is. and I've known people that have come against Dave and it's like, ooh, and I pull for Dave. And I agree in general with the debt thing also, but there is ways of leveraging. So you've got this system that I still think some people have a difficult time wrapping their head around. So I'm going to get whole life policies. I've got contracts. And then from those policies, I'll borrow against the cash value so that I could then go out and do other things. I'm sure there's some people will say, you know, I think I'm going to just get the policies and let it sit. That is probably fine, but it's not really maximizing what someone can do, correct?
Well, think about it this way. The policy is not an investment. The policy is a replacement for your savings vehicle. So you tell me if someone says, yeah, I'm just going to let the policy ride and that's going to be my, long-term deal. Well, then the question would be is how wealthy do you believe people that just save money become? There's not a good example of somebody that just saves money in a savings vehicle that gets wealthy. At best, they're going to keep up with inflation. At worst, like a checking account or even a savings account, they're losing ground as it relates to inflation. So it's like termites in your money. It's not actually going to help you get to wealth. True wealth is through cash flow. And so I always have to take whatever the savings dollars I have and put it to work. Otherwise, I use the term, it's lazy cash. Lazy cash is not acceptable. We have to keep it at work. It has to be doing work while we're actively at work or creating wealth. It has to be doing its job. The policies just are the greatest holding place. Nelson Nash called it your warehouse for wealth. And I think that's a perfect analogy because what's a warehouse do? Things come into the warehouse, things go out of the warehouse. Things come into the warehouse, things go out. Your policy, your system of policies has to be always in flux, always being used. It's not something to just be sitting there, picking up dust. And so that's something we've really, really honed in on is the systematic use, not just the cul-de-sac, if you will, for your money.
Right. And that's where a lot of these, which I love these topics. I mean, you guys have massive amounts of topics on your YouTube channel and your podcast where you're really just gathering. It sounds like you're gathering information to try to find ways of generating passive income because you've got all of these mechanisms, these savings mechanisms in place that people can then go out and do that. There's one interesting thing that you do, and I think I heard it on the podcast. I guess you probably do it on YouTube too, is that you and Russ will state where you're currently at, your key performance indicator of passive income. I want to ask you if you can say where that is here in spring. We'll put a timestamp on this episode, spring of 2025. But before I do, I want to ask if your parents are okay with you letting the world know, with the background you grew up in, letting the world know how much money you're making in your passive income. Do they ever say anything to you about that? I'm curious.
It is somewhat of a concern that people are like, wait a minute, you're putting this out on Front Street here. And my answer to that, Tim, is we don't want to be thought leaders. I think the world is hungry for authenticity. Like they need to know that you're not just talking about something, that you're actually doing it, that there is actual action being taken, and that people are eating their own cooking. That's how we say it here in Alabama, right? Eat your own cooking. We want people we need to be results leaders. And it is uncomfortable at times, but what we always lead with is this is not a boastful, like, hey, look at us. This is, hey, this is what's working. This is what's not working. By the way, we share those arrows in the back as well. And we've had some pretty humbling moments on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. But at the end of the day, it's to lead by example. I told you that initially. Jesus gave models. This is a model that we can share with the world to say, we built the system. We became investors, not perfect investors. In fact, we've lost a lot of money. And this is the result. And if you want results similar, we can show you the way. That's ultimately what this is about. And we don't share our active income, we share our passive income. And our whole job is to inspire, educate, empower, and expose people to what's possible.
Yeah, I think I heard ranges 35K to 50 and bouncing around, right? Those are nice numbers.
Yeah, it's not perfectly stable every single month because certain things pay out in some months, certain don't pay out in others. We have lots of different areas that we have money in. I'll give you one quick example. We have 3 cars on Turo that someone else operates. And last month I showed a negative $900 because one of those cars came back with massive damage. Two tires busted, or not busted, but the wheels were dented and a tie rod end was busted. It was just, they must have hit a curb or something and just didn't care, And there was also an alternator that went out. Like there's maintenance issues that go wrong. Whereas the month before, it was like $2,700 just with those 3 cars. And I didn't do anything. I was not hands-on at all. So there's ups and downs with each one of these things. But on the whole, they average around $50,000 a month. And we're constantly just trying to think about what's the next thing or what should we put more money into. And I think one of our biggest negatives is that we are the ones that interview all these people. And so we want to try them all, we probably should start to limit down our favorites.
What's your
favorite?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your favorite one right now?
Yeah, I think buying and selling raw land on notes is my favorite. If you haven't interviewed thelandgeek.com, Mark Podolsky, he taught us this method, and he actually has a team that runs our business. We buy land for 20 to 30 cents on the dollar. We sell it to retail buyers on terms. So I buy a property for $2,500. I sell it for $10,000, but the $10,000 may be $1,000 down and $300 a month for 30 months. That's a perfect deal for us. We just keep stacking 300, and that has yielded over $30,000 a month just in that one asset type. I love it. It's hard for that thing to go wrong because in any economy, people are flooding to real assets like land, and we make it affordable for people to be able to do it. They're not making any more of it. So it's really a great, stable asset class, and it's fully run by an operator who's an expert.
Yeah, that's good. There's probably so many more. I recommend people, I think I see a bunch of them here over on the YouTube channel, and I'm sure the podcast. So there's a lot of resources you guys have. I think, Joey, this would be a great time to just share with the audience. We'll include things down in the notes. what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, to get more info? You know, you've got podcasts, you've got book, you've got YouTube. Where do you want people to go to connect?
Well, I'll tell you, we made a specific page just for your audience. If you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/seek go create. So wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/seek go create. Our contact info's on there, our access to our community. I think we have some other free resources there. Love for you to connect with us and let us know that you heard Tim and I having this great conversation today, so we know where you came from.
All right. Last quick question. One quick tip. We've covered a bunch, but like your quick rapid fire tip that you could give before I wrap up.
The one thing we didn't talk about is becoming an investor. It starts with knowing your investor DNA. Go and find your investor DNA profile. We have a tool that you can engage with us on, and it tells you, how does your personality, how did God create you to see the world with your resources, your experiences, your access to capital? What out of about 16 different passive income strategies line up the best with you? Because you should just be doing the things that have the highest ROI. Do what lines up with your personality, and you will actually get closer and faster to financial freedom than anything else.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that because everybody's got different mindset, and I mean, there are things that I'm comfortable with that you may not be, and et cetera. So I love that. So we'll make sure to include all that. Joey Muré, thank you so much. Wealth Without Wall Street is all of their resources. He gave a great link. We'll include it down in the notes. It's been a cool conversation. I love it. We've got new episodes every Monday. I appreciate everybody joining in here. Keep commenting, keep rating, all those cool things. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.